From the front lines of the military to the front lines of business, this is Military to Management. I'm your host, Eamon. Each episode, we uncover how veterans are translating discipline, leadership, and mission-first values into success in today's corporate world. Hey, Cullen, thanks for joining the Military to Management podcast. Your career has had some very interesting career projection and progression. Definitely excited to talk to you about that today and what you're doing now. But first, let's dive into what were you doing in the military? What was kind of your background, and what was that initial transition like?
Yeah. So thanks for having me on the podcast. I've been looking forward to this for a little while. So my career was in the Marine Corps Reserves. I enlisted right out of high school, which would have been 2003. So instead of going straight to college like most of my buddies, I decided to enlist first. Obviously went to the East Coast for boot camp and then, all the follow-on training. The reserves are a little bit different. Obviously, at the time, my unit needed somebody in logistics, and I didn't really know much about what I was getting myself into at all, in terms of careers. And so I said, sure, that sounds like something I could potentially use after the Marine Corps. I'll do that. And so, I went to that training and then checked into 3rd Force Recon Unit, which is the reserve unit out of Mobile. And almost immediately in early 2004, by the time I checked in the unit, my unit was already doing a workup in 29 Palms, California for Iraq. So I essentially was home for a week, said hey to my parents, invited my parents, and met my company out in 29 Palms. We did our workup, deployed to Iraq 2004 to 2005, came back, went back to reserve status, and then got mobilized again in 2006 to 2007, went back to Iraq. Both workups in 29 Palms, both demobs in 29 Palms, both deployments to the Anbar province of Iraq.
That's a super interesting career for like a reserve career. You just basically did an actual or equivalent to like an active duty career, 2 deployments in probably 4 to 6 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what it felt like, honestly. Like my reserve time. I mean, I think I got after I got back from my first deployment, I got a year of college in, and then went back. And then when I got back from my last deployment, I sort of just coasted, for lack of a better term, through the rest of my reserve career, and then got out of the reserves and got out of college around the same time.
Awesome. So your transition then was intermittent, smooth in the fact that you had the college going on. Like, can you kind of talk, were there any challenges, like maybe that second time when you got out and finished college? Like, can you talk a little bit through how that was? Because it seems like a pretty smart way to go about it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, it just it happened to line up where my initial reserve contract was ending. They do a 6x2, 6 years reserve, 2 years inactive. And so I was coming up on the end of my first 6 years, and I was graduating college right around the same time. So I was like, let's just, let's move on with life. Let's see what the civilian world has to offer. I'll be out of college. I'll be out of the Marine Corps. I'm kind of free to do whatever. So I had a good natural progression, probably better than most, luckily, by kind of finishing my deployments early and then being able to focus on school until I could graduate. There's a little interruptions here or there, like anything. But yeah, I mean, it was, I'd say the harder part was going from active duty Marine to civilian college student to active duty Marine to civilian college. You know what I mean? It's just like back and forth was probably the more difficult part than the transition.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, you go from active duty to Marine to free and clear college student, and then back again. That's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't awful. You go back to, I went to Alabama, so you go back to party town, and then, so you kind of, if I wanted to break from college, I go do something. Marine Corps, if I wanted to break, I go do something.
Yeah, that is pretty nice in a way of, if you think about it. Were there any big leadership lessons or things that you kind of took away from your time, in the Marines that have helped you, to this day?
Yeah, I mean, there is A couple things, obviously. I mean, besides the overall, like, I would say that the Marine Corps helped bring the leader out of me. Before that, I was kind of like, I was an athlete and I was a decent student, but I wasn't looking for any kind of like standout leadership roles. I was kind of like a middle of the pack kind of guy. And truthfully, that's how I was even through boot camp until the very end when I was like, I gotta step up and try to do something. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. Like in college, I started taking on leadership roles just naturally. And then as you progress in rank in the Marine Corps, you start taking on leadership roles. So it just kind of naturally happened for me. But I can remember on my first deployment, we were doing our workup in 29 Palms. We were actually doing this like exercise in Mount Town. It was in Victorville, California. You remember this place?
Of course.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? It's like an abandoned town that you got to do kind of door to door operations on. But yeah, we were crashed out in this house, and the staff sergeant that was in charge of us was like, you should always act or conduct yourself 2 ranks ahead of where you are. So like at the time, I think I was a PFC, honestly, and he's like, you should consider yourself like a corporal, conduct yourself like a corporal. I mean, don't obviously like, you're not in charge. You have zero power, but, conduct yourself in that way. Imagine your life going in that direction. And I've kind of always stuck with that, even in the civilian world. Like, are you a director? Look at yourself at the executive level. Are you a manager? Look at yourself at the director level. You know what I mean? Just kind of picture your life and operate as if you're a couple ranks or positions ahead.
That's really good advice, for multiple different reasons, but for people getting out of the military, and then honestly just general advice on how to progress in a career, that's amazing advice. Can you tell us about how your career has progressed since you like got out of college and what that path kind of took for you?
Yeah, so I just kind of started. All right, so first thing out of college, there was this former Marine infantry officer who had started a maritime security company in Mobile after Mobile's a big port city, Mobile, Alabama. He'd started a maritime security company after the USS Alabama thing, or no, USS Alabama, whatever that was, with Captain Phillips, where he got taken hostage. So he started this company after that. When I got out, they were like, hey, you should connect with this guy. He's got this maritime security company. I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. So I connected with them. We couldn't really like make it work right away because they were waiting on contracts, et cetera, et cetera. So I started kind of helping them out in the office with various stuff because I was just like, this is what I want to do. So like, if you need some help, pay me $10 an hour. I'll help you in the office until you get a contract. And so anyway, the contract started rolling around. So I did maritime security for a couple years after college, and I loved it. But my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we were getting serious, and these contracts would be like, oh, you're going to be gone for a week, and you'd end up being gone for 3 weeks. And then you'd get back and they'd be like, oh, there's another turnaround in 3 days. And it was just kind of like unpredictable, non-conducive to married or family life. So I was like, I should probably figure out something more steady. And so I just kind of worked through a few managerial roles, learning my way, honing my leadership skills in the management world until I sort of found my niche, which, was about, I'd say 8 years ago. I'm 40 now. So imagine I graduated college at 25. And for the next 7 years, I just kind of had various roles, looking for good opportunities, looking for good experience. And so I found this niche. This is a good story worth mentioning. Got into I was at the point where I was like, all right, I think I'd like some ownership in a company. And I was sort of keeping my ears and eyes open for that. This guy who was actually a Marine at 3rd Force Recon also, but way before me. He was living in Mobile. We were living in kind of Mobile, Baldwin County, which is, South Alabama. And he had started this nonprofit called Vets Recover, which was helping veterans with all kinds of issues. Mainly it was a recovery center, but it's for any kind of emotional, social, mental health, well-being for veterans. And he had a for-profit business. So he and I connected over the nonprofit. I just reached out like, hey, I want to help, whatever you need. that was going to be kind of my give back, my volunteer opportunity. And so he and I formed a relationship, and he said, "Hey, look, I need somebody to run my for-profit business while I'm focused on this nonprofit business." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And essentially, it was a legal tech company, which I had no clue about, nothing. But it sounded, the company was doing well. It sounded like a cool opportunity. So I partnered up with him, and that's what got me into the legal world. And then from there, I transitioned to an in-house chief operating officer of a personal injury law firm. So the personal injury law firm was looking for somebody with COO experience and some legal experience, not an attorney, but more business than legal, right? So I was like, this looks like a cool opportunity. So I got in-house at this firm and just figured like, this is where I just felt comfortable. I like the management style in PI firms. I like the way that the work and the cash flows in PI firms. And so I just was like, I don't think I'll do anything else. Like I might go with another firm, which is kind of what I'm doing now. But I once I got inside a firm at the executive level, being a non-attorney, working at that level was really cool to me. And so I've been doing that ever since.
Amazing. What is like a typical day or week in the life like for what you're doing now as a COO for law firms?
Well, if you're a COO and you work for one firm, right, your typical day is just, well, at least for me at my first firm, it was we'd have our leadership team, we'd have leadership meetings. I'd check in with all my direct reports, which was usually like the marketing director, the HR director, the managing paralegal, the managing attorney, whatever that looks like, whatever those different, accounting, finance, whatever those different departments are, would usually the people, the owners, the quote unquote, the owners of those departments would essentially report to the COO. So I would check in with them. I'd look at data and dashboards. It's the whole industry is really very data driven these days. I'm sure you can attest to. And so looking at dashboards, whether it's a financial dashboard, whether it's a inventory control dashboard for case inventory, whether it's a marketing dashboard, there's a dashboard for everything. So I spent a lot of my time working at those, checking KPIs that we had set out for the rest of the team, different marketing initiatives. So there's always something different going on in the day in the life of an in-house COO. And now I'm sort of fractional, so I get the opportunity to work with multiple firms. So I'm doing that on a similar stuff on a smaller scale, right? Less hours in the week. So I got to you got to work quickly and you got to work smart so that you're able to still make an impact for these firms at less hours during the week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. It's interesting. So you've kind of shifted from in-house to fractional. Very interesting. Do you see that? Do you see any like big trends or major trends in the legal industry right now that you're keeping tabs on, or talk to us a little bit about that? Like any big trends? Mm-hmm.
We're at a pivotal moment right now in the legal industry, I would say, especially for PI firms. There's a couple big things happening. Number one, the adoption of AI, which is kind of seeping into all different departments of PI firms. When I say PI, personal injury, seeping into different areas. So, there's AI and marketing. Legal marketing is a monster. It's probably one of the most intense marketing industries that, aside from maybe the car industry. But so AI is seeping in there. You got AI seeping into finance. You got AI seeping into uh, the legal side, whether it's medical chronologies, whether it's drafting demands. So, intake, the intake department, it's AI. So a lot of firms they're either too late or they've already seen that, hey, I need to jump on this AI thing. And a lot of companies are being formed specifically for different solutions in AI within the legal field. So I would say AI, obviously, and then um, ownership, right? So we've all seen the non-attorney ownership uh, law, I guess, that was passed in Arizona and maybe one other state. I can't remember what it is, but so the ability for non-attorneys to own law firms, which kind of turns into a private equity opportunity for firms, which allows them to expand. So in some ways that's good. In a lot of ways that attorneys don't like that. They think it's taking away from the authenticity of their craft. And in some ways it probably does, but it was probably one of the few remaining industries where private equity was not in, and it is, and it's probably coming pretty quick if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think it's probably coming very quick. Definitely AI. And as you know, I'm also in the legal industry, but definitely AI is coming quick as well. How have these two trends like impacted like what you're doing? I know you're doing some AI with some of the firms that you're running. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, it saves money, right? It's a big money saver. It's becoming more sophisticated, so you can actually rely on it. Um, but it can save in manpower. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's still a need for professionals in the legal industry, whether it's paralegals, attorneys, whatever. Can't take the place of those, but it's helping move those positions along quicker. And same with marketing. You can make a video with, like, you and I could make a video of us saying whatever we wanted, and then we could put it out there so you can pretty much do anything you want in marketing at a fraction of the cost, because I can write a script and just have a picture of myself or a video and mesh the two, and then I can get it to say whatever it wants. Where you used to, if you were making a commercial, you had to, I mean, people still do this obviously, but you get in front of a camera crew, there's a bunch of labor involved, there's a bunch of equipment involved, there's a bunch of time involved. So it's a time saver, which is ultimately a money saver.
Amazing. Where do you want to be, in the next 6 to 12 months, either, you know, with the firms you're running or just professionally in general?
Um, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, I want to keep working fractionally with firms that I can make a difference in. Um, I want to only work with, dream come true, right? But I only want to work with firms that we're completely aligned, right? So, like, I'm not really in a position now where um, I can be somewhat picky about who I work with, but I just want to get to a point where I'm only working with people that I like and that like me, and that are aligned on, sort of business philosophies, if that makes sense. Um, I think there's opportunity to grow the fractional or the consulting side into something more significant. But for the time being, I like what I'm doing. Maybe I'll be part of one of these alternative business structures where private equity is, where they allow non-attorney ownership. But who knows? But for now, I kind of feel like I'm pretty good. I've got a young family. We've got a great place to live. There's schools right nearby. Our church is right nearby. Everything's in this little bubble. Of course, I travel a good bit, but like, if I can keep doing this and keep spending time with my family, then I'll be happy.
It's amazing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the dream of many, to have exactly what you have right now. Um, if there's one big issue that you could remove, like at the snap of a finger or like with a magic wand, either to help law firms or to help your business as a fractional COO, like what would that be?
It's a little bit probably surface level, but you still have a lot of law firm owners who think that in order to be productive, someone has to be in a seat inside the office. And I just don't see it that way. I mean, I've done it both ways. I'm sure you have too, but some firm owners get it. There's PI firms that are completely remote, right? There's PI firms where all their labor's outsourced. And then there's PI firms that it's like no remote, everybody's in a seat at this time. If I don't see them, they're not working. They need to be here from 8 to 5. It's just not that way anymore. But there's still a little bit of that old school mentality that's floating around.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to wave the wand for sure. Um, so you're now fractional COO for multiple law firms. I know you kind of talked about it earlier, but is there a direct tie back to your time in the Marines that you think kind of helped you get to this point? Would you like attribute it to that think two levels up, you're already thinking about the next level two, or is there something else that you think might have helped in addition to uh, that guidance?
Yeah, honestly, like I think I attribute most of it to a level head, right? So in the Marine Corps, we learn to we drill so much that um, we learn to perform under stress well, right? So we can keep a level head, we can be even keel. And I think that's helped me through my career, right? So when people look to a leader, they look to on how to react. If the leader's freaking out or stressed, they are too. If they're calm and collected, they think, okay, everything's going to be okay. And so I think that's been instrumental, and I hear that a lot out of people like, wow, you're so, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but they're like, you're so kind of even keel, and for for part of that it's my personality, but for the other part of it's by design. You want to, if you're freaking out, that doesn't instill trust in any team. You know what I mean? Especially in the leadership position.
Yeah, that's so important, and especially in business or in the legal industry, if people start freaking out, everybody gets worried and they start jumping ships because there's a million different law firms doing the exact same thing, and I'm sure that's the same in any industry. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who might be getting out of the military soon or recently got out, um, that wants to pursue kind of like a similar path that you have?
I would, so if you're about to get out and you're interested in working in a law firm but not in as an attorney, not going to law school, I would try to get in with the different departments, HR, marketing, finance. Get into one of these and figure out what you like. We've done that with people in our firms who've shown promise, move them to an entry level position and see how they perform, see how they like it. But it gives them a broad overview of the legal industry or that firm as a whole, depending on the size of the firm. So you can kind of go from there. But if you want to get in, just get in one of the ancillary departments. You're not gonna. You may not get in as operations until you've had some exposure to the industry as a whole. So like you see everything from the marketing side. That'd be a good place to start. You see everything from the intake side. That might be a good place to start. So um, yeah, if you want the most exposure and the quickest education on PI, I would start with marketing.
Awesome. Great advice. Anything else you want to share with the listeners? Any parting pieces of wisdom, and or if anybody's trying to look you up and what you're doing, how can they find you?
You can look me up on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Cullen Millsap. And then, parting words, simplify, roll tide, all that good stuff.
Great
That's,
words of wisdom.
yeah.
All right, Colin. Appreciate your time, man. This is great, and best of luck going forward on all your future endeavors.
Thanks, Eamon.
Thank you to our guest for sharing their journey from the military to corporate leadership. We'll be back soon with more stories of veterans proving that success doesn't end with a uniform. It begins a new mission. This is Military to Management with your host, Eamon.